Very interesting thing has happened. The Orville and Star Trek Discovery that came on the same day had almost the same theme, but in a slightly different way. We'll talk about that after this. Hello out there, I'm the Oldest Nerd. As usual, we'll probably have spoilers on this, but interesting parallels in two shows. One directed by Robert Duncan McNeill over at the Orville, and in Discovery, Jonathan Frakes, both Star Trek alums, both good directors, and both made good shows this week. And this was one that was a little difficult for me to unpack. We start out talking about Spock. We're led to believe that we may be getting closer to Spock, and there is some revelation about what's happened to him, but it becomes kind of the B story. Before long, there's another sighting of the Red Angel, and the ship finds that it's over 100 light years away, or some such like that, or 100,000 light years away, or some gobbledygook distance that a starship at maximum warp couldn't get in their children's lifetime. So they say, hey, we've got the spore drive. And Pike says, well, yeah, I know about that. Can you do it? And so Stamets gets in line to do it, and they spore jump. And it leads to some good lines. Saru says to Pike, you never forget your first. Before they go to the spore drive too, it was a funny line that they say, do you have any breath to, before you make the jump, do you have any questions? And Pike says, we're going to be traveling on a highway of mushrooms. I guess I'll have to take it on faith. Faith is one of the big things about this episode as well, as it was in the Orville. They were talking about astrology in the Orville, and in Discovery here, they're talking about religion directly. And we learned something about Pike. His father was a scientist and a theologian, teacher of comparative religion. And so if Pike is not a man of faith himself, he's certainly very knowledgeable about it. And it's left a little bit vague. He's asking the landing party just, what they know about religion, and Burnham knows about it, but obviously doesn't believe in any of it, and nobody else on the landing party. But Pike himself appears to have more than just an academic knowledge. And so he is able to communicate with the people when they go down pretty easily. They travel incognito because General Order 1, the Prime Directive, is fully in force. And they proceed to find out where a distress signal has come, and once again, where the damn red thing went. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Tilly had been doing some dangerous experimentation on the asteroid that they had pulled in from the last episode, and the thing kicks back on her and knocks her down and cuts her up, and she's taken to sick bay and given a scolding by Saru, who identifies with her in such that when he came into Starfleet, he wanted to prove to everybody that he had the mettle to do everything that could be done, and perhaps pushed himself beyond his limits. And with Tilly being perhaps the youngest person in command training up to that point, that was something perhaps that she seemed to have something to prove, and that he cautioned her to be careful with that, it wasn't something that he frowned upon necessarily, but was concerned about her. And I thought that was a nice show of compassion there toward Tilly. Tilly, of course, they're playing around, they're dancing around, trying to keep her from being Wesley Crusher, but also for her to be kind of the resident genius. And there is a certain amount of that, but enough people around her that are smart enough that can say, yeah, we know this too, but we take it a little slower, especially people like Stamets. In that part of the story, Antsy has already had too much caffeine, even in the hospital ward, and so comes to the bridge in her night clothes and proceeds to give a solution to a radiation problem that could kill everybody on the planet. Of course, it keeps you from sending a shuttle down, and keeps you from using the transporter, and messes up communications. That's always the good fallback whenever you want to put your people in trouble. You have to cut them off, and then somebody has to come up with an idea either on the ground or at the ship. And in this case, Tilly comes up with a plausible idea for using the meteorite after her experience with it. She's learned something about its attractive force and that it can attract all the radiation and allow them to get the captain and crew back in communications and off the planet if they need to. Which, of course, it turns out that they need to because, like every place that you go down and make contact, even on Star Trek, there's something that goes wrong. And in this case, we have a civilization in which their religions are a combination. Their religion is a combination of most of Earth's religions, as far as we can tell. And they scan the literature that they have there, are able to make pretty quick assumptions of what they believe and why. And while Burnham scoffs at it, the captain says, no, they have every right to have these beliefs, and how do you know that they're not right? And while they're dealing with people who believe in miracles, they believe that during World War III that they saw a red angel, and it's depicted in their stained glass, had rescued them and sent them to this planet, and that eventually technology would come to where they would be rescued or whatever. At least some people thought that. Others thought that this was just kind of the promised land, Terra Elysium, that's what they called it. And the settlement was called New Eden. And they did have a nice, peaceful society. And while Burnham argued that they should gather them all up and take them back to Earth, the captain was against that. First of all, because of the Prime Directive, and second of all, because what's wrong with all these people? They're perfectly happy. And so there's a discussion in different ways of religion and miracles, even on the ship. The young ensign who befriends Tilly is somebody that she seems to recognize but can't quite place. The reveal of that at the end of the program also lends to the whole theme of the show. And I give them great credit for taking on religion, and especially taking it on and going against Roddenberry. Now, Roddenberry was an atheist. He did not believe in an afterlife. He didn't believe in a God. As far as he would let it go, he would let the Starfleet people say that they represented many beliefs, as they said in one of the original series episodes, and that Picard was allowed to say that he believed that there was some kind of higher power, but not necessarily have a name for it. And yet we have in Pike someone who is truly religious, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that they took that step, that they took that risk, and so I think that made this it makes it something that makes you want to sit back and think of just what they were trying to say, how they were trying to do it. It has quite a few layers to it, and I may not have it all yet. Perhaps you do. If you can go to the comments and give me your reaction to this show, I'd like to have a discussion with you to see just where you find yourself on this. Did you like it? Did you think it went too far? Do you think it not go far enough? Was it too complex an episode? Did they try to pack too many things in a single episode? Or is it seed for later in the series, which I'm certain that it is? Let me know what you think. Please subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, don't go far.